Welcome you all once again to this Abaqus Python YouTube channel. So this is the lecture series on Abaqus Python Scripting, learn with the concepts. So this is the third lecture on this Abaqus Python Scripting, and in this lecture we will see how we can start developing or creating our Abaqus Python script. So what is the best place to start with? So first of all, the contents. So first we will see how the Python is integrated with the Abaqus. So Python integration with the Abaqus CE we will see, and then we will see some file formats, so specifically the replay files, journal files, and the recovery file. So all these three are very much useful for us to create our scripts, so we don't have to start from the scratch, so we will have something to work on. So that's why these files are important, and understanding their behaviors, understanding their format is going to be very much essential while creating our scripts. Okay, so above these three files you cannot directly use it for our purpose, but we have to make some changes. One of the important changes that is we have to do is this entity selection commands. So we will see that, and so when we see all these files we will find a lot of commands written in this file, and most of the time we may not understand these commands, and to understand these commands we must refer to this scripting guide, and this will be very much useful for us to getting to know these commands and their behaviors and different options available. We will see this point only if time permits, otherwise we will skip this point to the next session. So now let's see how Python is integrated with Abaqus CE. Okay, so here we will see how the Abaqus CE works. Okay, so first of all, this Abaqus kernel. So this Abaqus kernel is the brain of Abaqus CE. That means it takes all the inputs from the user. So whatever the action that you are doing in the Abaqus CE or through other various methods, all these actions actually carried out by this Abaqus kernel. So that's why it is the main component of the Abaqus CE workflow. So how an user can interact with this Abaqus kernel? So there are three ways actually. So first one is the GUI. So GUI is nothing but whatever you click on the Abaqus CE. So entering some value, clicking OK, cancel or something. So all these actions that you do right in Abaqus CE. So using that also you can interact with Abaqus kernel. So this is like one of the types of input that you are giving to the Abaqus kernel. And the other one is the CLI, command line interface. So through the CLI also you can interact with the Abaqus kernel. So you know in the CLI you can type commands and execute it, right? So through that also you can interact with Abaqus kernel. And the last one is the using the scripts. So in the first two methods, you know, you can do one task at a time, right? For example, you can click on something one at a time, right? And same thing in the CLA, you can execute one command at a time. But if you have some multiple commands to run, then you can use these scripts. Okay, so using these three components you can interact with the Abaqus kernel. But can you interact with Abaqus kernel directly? No. So that's where our main part comes, which will be going to be very much essential in order to learn Abaqus Python scripting, and that is something called Python interpreter. So this interpreter, what it does is it takes all the commands that are being given by this GUI, CLI and scripts, and it interprets this. So for example, if you have given something wrong as an input, then what it does is it interprets those commands, and something goes wrong, then it will throw some particular error. So what happens is all these components give the commands to this Python interpreter, and all these components will interact with some commands. Okay, so all these commands will be then given to the Python interpreter. Okay, and once the interpreter interprets this command correctly and says that it's okay and there are nothing wrong with it, then what it does, it gives these commands to the Abaqus kernel, and then it executes those commands, right? So in the process you can see all the Python commands that are available at this Python interpreter. Okay, so using the GUI, CLI script, whatever you do, all the commands are available at this Python interpreter, right? So what Abaqus does is it creates one files and logs all the commands that are being given to this Python interpreter, and these files are called this replay file. So it's like very good starting point for you, because you have all the commands that you have done in the GUI or using other methods, and you can directly go and check what is the method that I can use for particular operation, and that's a very much good starting point, right? And all this workflow is called as Abaqus CE. So all this happens in the Abaqus CE domain. Okay, next we will see the replay file. So why the replay files are important? Because this using this replay file you can recreate your model database. So how these replay files are created? Whenever you start a new session, what Abaqus does is it creates this abaqus.rpi file. So this file is nothing but the replay file. So what happens is whenever you start your Abaqus CE or viewer, so you can see for this both CE and viewer, whenever you start it, Abaqus creates this RPO file. And when you start working on your Abaqus CE or viewer window, all these actions are converted into the Python, and those are written to this Abaqus replay file. Okay. So what type of commands, what type of action can be recorded? So you can, for example, if you have modified your model, that is going to be recorded. If you have rotated the model, change the background color, or change the ODB display color, or modify the ODB data. So all these things are being recorded in the replay file. So you can see, so everything whatever you are doing is being recorded in this replay file. Okay. The last point about the replay file is only the 5 recent version of the replay files will be written. So what does it mean? In whenever you launch a new session, right, Abaqus creates this RPA file, right, and when you close that session and open it again, then again Abaqus creates the new RPA file. Okay, so if you want to refer the previous session replay file, you cannot access replay file more older than the 5 sessions, right? So for example, at this point, let's say we have this 5 replay files. Okay, and I just close the session and I open this session once again. Okay, so you can see the new Abaqus RPA file is created. Okay, which is not similar to this file. So what happens to this file is this file will be renamed as the abaqus.rpi.5. Okay. Okay, so this file is this one, and you can see this rpi.1 file, it is not available now. This file is got deleted now by the Abaqus. Now how you can use this replay file? So you can execute the replay file using 2 ways. The first way is using the Windows PowerShell command. So what you have to do is you have to write this command Abaqus CE. So you know this command basically opens the Abaqus CE, right? Or you can write Abaqus viewer also, and then you have to write this option replay and give the equal to sign, and then give the replay file name. Okay. Okay, so what happens when you run the script is, so first of all, this replay file will contain all the things, right? So whenever you are doing some actions in your Abaqus CE and sometime error may occur, so those actions also are recorded in this replay file. So what happens when you run this replay file like this? So whenever the error occurs, if no error occurs, obviously nothing going to happen. But whenever any error happens, what Abaqus does is it ignores those commands, it ignores those errors, and just continue to run the next line of code. And the second way we can run is simply from the file menu and click on the run script option. So in this way, if some error occurs, what happens is it stops the execution. Whenever any error occurs, whenever running this replay file, what Abaqus does is it pops up the error window, displaying that particular error message. Okay, and when you click on OK or cancel or whatever the option you choose, after that it doesn't run the subsequent lines of code while running the replay file. Okay, so this is the one difference between these two ways of running this replay file. Most probably I think you should use this first method because it's ignores the error. The next file we have is journal file. Okay, so journal file is important because you can recreate your model whenever your model database becomes corrupted. So whenever you are doing any action, right, so that action was recorded in the replay file, but that doesn't happen with the journal file. So whatever the command that are being stored and in the journal file are only get saved whenever you save the model database. So you have to go to the file menu, then save as, or click Ctrl S, and then only this journal file will be created, and the name of the journal file will be same as the model database name. So that is one difference we have seen, right? So replay file will be named as abaqus.rpy, but the journal file will be named after the model database name. So this one of the difference between the journal file and replay file is it contains only the commands which are related to the model databases. So what does that mean is, So let's say we have this bunch of actions, right? Yes. A user has modified the model, rotated the model, changed the background color of the viewport, or changed the ODB contour, right? So among all these, it saves only these model related commands. So whenever you are modifying any model, then only it saves this command. Other actions it does not record. Okay, so in that way, it's little clean than the replay file, because lot of commands in the replay files we may not use always, but in the journal file it records only the model related commands. Okay, and the next is how you can execute this journal file. So you can execute this journal file using the Windows PowerShell again. So you have to write this abacus CE command, then you have to use this recover option, and then they give the journal file name. In this case, the journal file belongs to the beam model database, so that's why it's beam.jnl. Okay, the next we have here is a recovery file. So recovery file saves only the unsaved model database commands, and the saved commands, as we have seen, is saved in the journal file. So for example, let's say you opened your session and created one model, made some changes. So at this point, what Abaqus does is it creates one recovery file. Okay, and the recovery file will be named as abaqus1.rec. So this one number you can see, right, it depends on the already existing file in the working directory. So for example, this abaqus1.rec file, if already available, then it will name as abaqus2. Okay, let's say after making some changes, you saved your model, and the name of the model you have given is beam. So at this point, Abaqus will save two files. One will be the beam.ce, and the other one is beam.journal file, right, JNL. At this point, whatever the commands were recorded in this abaqus1 recovery file will be copied to this beam.jnl file, because as you know, both these two files saves only the model database commands, right? So that's why this at this point both these files will be equal. And at this point, what Abaqus does is it deletes this abaqus1.recovery file. Why? Because all the data are being saved in the beam.journal file, so no need of this recovery file now. Now let's say you have made some further changes to your model. So at this point, what happens is Abaqus again creates the recovery file, but this time the name of this recovery file is different. Now the name of this recovery file is same as the model database name. So here we have the model database name as beam. So that's why the recovery file name is beam.rec. Now let's say again you save the model, and what will happen is changes will be saved to the journal file. So let's say you saved your model once again. So what happens at this point is whatever the commands that are wrote in the recovery file, right, all these commands are now appended to the journal file. Okay, now you can see journal file will always have all the data related to the model database. Okay, and again because we have saved the model and all the data we have now in the journal file, Abaqus deletes this beam recovery file.
So now we will see how recovery file is useful.
Let's consider one situation where your Abaqus session aborts unexpectedly, maybe because of the power cut or some action that you shouldn't have done in the Abaqus CE, or some maybe another issue. Okay, let's consider that issue now. Let's consider the scenario that you opened the Abaqus session, then made some changes or created some model. Okay, and at this point, as you know, Abaqus creates this recovery file, abaqus1.recovery file. So at this point, what happens is Abaqus closes abruptly, and next what you do is you open the session once again. Okay, at this point, what Abaqus does is Abaqus search for this recovery file. If no recovery file found, then it does nothing. But whenever it finds any recovery file, okay, it pops us this error message, and this error message is very intuitive. So first option it says is you can recover the changes. That means you can recreate your model database. Let's say you think that the last command that I have executed or the last action that I have done might have caused the error. So in that case, you can tick on this option. In that case, Abaqus does not execute the last command, and you can stop abrupt closing of your Abaqus CE session. And the other option you can chooses this do not recover changes. So okay. The last option that is important actually. So whenever you are selecting one of these first two options, right, what happens is Abaqus deletes this recovery file. But what if you want to save this recovery file because it is belong to some other database, model database? So in that case, you can click on this third option. Okay, in this case, what happens is Abaqus does not delete this recovery file. And let's consider some another scenario. Let's say you made some changes in your model database, and now Abaqus closes abruptly. Okay, and next what you do is you open the session once again. As you see, so whenever you open this Abaqus session, right, new session, it checks for this abaqus.recovery file, and let's say if it doesn't found that, it doesn't do anything. Now you want to open the same Abaqus model database beam.ce, right, and you have opened that model, let's say. Now at this point, what Abaqus does is it checks for the recovery file, and at this point, if any recovery file found by Abaqus, then it will give the same error, and it will give you some options to choose from. Okay. Now one of the important things between the journal file and the replay file is whatever the changes are being done to your model database, all are saved in the journal file, right? And the journal file is something related to the model database name, and that's why all the changes that are being done in the model database, right, all the changes are reflected in the journal file. So in case your model database get corrupted, you can recreate your model using the journal file. Okay, but same thing you cannot do with the replay file, because you know every session your replay file is going to change, but that is not the case with the journal file. So that's why the journal file is important.
Now we have seen all these three types of files, right, that Abaqus creates, and we know that all these files are very much important because we will going to use the commands from these files. However, all the commands that are there in this file, we cannot use them directly. So some commands we have to change it, we have to modify them, and then only we can use it. So this is one of the important things we have to change, this entity selection commands.
So all these files by default contains this get sequence from mask command. It's a internal command, and it's not very human readable, so we cannot directly use in our script, because if we are using it directly, then we might get some error while running the script, because all the data that is being given to this get sequence from mask command are something internal. Just one example here. So in the first line, we are accessing the cells, and how we are accessing is from the MDB's object model. We are accessing the models. Then from the models container, we are accessing the particular model A. Then from this model A, we are accessing the parts container, and from the parts container, we are accessing this rectangular beam part. Okay, and the cells, what it represents is it represents all the cells that are being saved in this part object, rectangular beam part object. So now let's say I want to get some subset of these cells, so I want to select some cells out of this all entire length of cells. So how you can do is you can use this get sequence from mask command, and you can see there is a some weird syntax here. In the string it has returns in hash, then with the square brackets and all. Okay, so that's why we cannot replicate this syntaxes, and that's why it is not human readable. One of the important thing to do is you have to replace these commands in order to use your in order to create your main script. So how do we do that? So basically you have to change the journaling options. So what this journaling option means is whenever you are doing something in the Abaqus CE, creating some Python files, right? So these options are related to the how Abaqus is going to write the commands into those files. So if you could change those options, we can change these commands that are being written by the Abaqus CE. That means we can able to override these commands, this get sequence from mask command, with some alternative commands which are more human readable and we can further use. So you can access the journaling option from the session object model, and because this journal option has no constructor, that's why you have to use this set values method. And what option we have to change? We have to change this replay geometry and recovery geometry. So the first option is replay geometry, right? So this is something related to the replay files, and this is something related to the recovery file. And for these two options, there are three values we can give. and we will see one by one what this value means. So first one is the coordinate. So whenever you are setting the replay geometry and recover geometry option to this coordinate, it uses this find that and get closest command to select the entities from this model. Okay, and the other one is index. So whenever you are giving index here, then it will use the index for the particular entity to select it. Okay, and the last one is the compressed index. So this, if you're using this option, it will use this get sequence from mask command, that is by default. So what we have to do is we can use this replay geometry and assign it to the coordinate, and recover geometry assign it to the coordinates. So what you have to do is you have to open your Abaqus CE and go to the command line interface, type this command, and what happens is after that whatever action you will do in the Abaqus CE, and whatever the commands Abaqus will write in the journal or replay file, it will include this find at and get closest command. It will not include this get sequence from mask command. Then you can use this command directly into your main script. Okay.
So I think that's all from this session. We're supposed to discuss about Abaqus scripting guide, but I think if you discuss that, this session will stretch very long. So let's discuss this topic in the next session. So in the next session, basically we will discuss about the Abaqus data types. So there are few data types that Abaqus has added to the Python data types. So we'll discuss that. So before that, we will discuss the today's extra topic, that is Abaqus Python scripting guide, and then we will discuss about this Abaqus data types, and at the end we will also discuss different ways of importing the modules. So see you in the next session.